What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video. In this video we're going to take a look at materials in Revit specifically from different years, different versions. On the left, in this entire left side, we have a material that I've built that is in Revit 2018. It's basically just using a base color, your typical image, and a bump map. Whereas if you watch my other material videos, which I would highly recommend, on the other side here, we're looking at a new type of material, a PBR material, a physically based rendered material that we first saw in Revit 2019 and beyond. So I'm actually in Revit 2020, so all of this does apply as well. But not only do we have that standard looking base color, that base image that you're used to seeing, we also have a roughness map, a normal map, as well as an ambient occlusion map. And all these different maps work together to create a more physically accurate image. And I'm not only going to demonstrate what this looks like in Revit, because I honestly don't care what materials look like in Revit. I tend to cater my materials more towards what they look like in Inkscape or Twinmotion. So we're going to take this model that's looking at both the 2018 material and 2019 plus material, and we're going to take these into Inkscape and Twinmotion. Give a look at them, see what the difference is, and see why you definitely should be making these new PBR types of materials starting in Revit 2019 and beyond. Before we get into it, I do want to say, if you happen to enjoy this video or just at any point learn something, if you wouldn't mind demolishing that like button, it really helps me out a lot. Let's go to the materials, and I want to show you how these materials are built. Looking at the materials here, I'm going to go to brick, and I just have brick 1 and brick 2. This brick is, I just have that base color and then that bump map, and then there's my brick pattern right there. It doesn't look all that great. I'm going to change this to the same cube, and a little boring. It's kind of a basic brick pattern, doesn't look that great. But switching to this brick 2, we can clearly see a big difference here. We've got our base color, our roughness map, our normal map, and then finally our ambient occlusion map applied. And immediately you can see a stark difference in the two, and you can immediately see why you'd want to use them. And to confirm that these are different versions, we can see this little orange box, or this little orange icon here at the corner of the box. It says, for improved rendering, replace this current appearance asset in the material with a newer version. We started seeing this pop up in Revit 2019 when they introduced the new versions of these appearance assets. And again, I covered this in a previous video, but just to quickly cover this, if I look at this old version, I can see I've got my generic, I've got reflectivity, transparency, cutout, self-illumination, bump, and tint. Whereas with this newer version, I've got a lot more. I've got parameters, which is just a renamed general, but I also have the roughness map. So I've got parameters, translucency, emissivity, roughness pattern or relief pattern, cutout, advanced highlight materials. I got a lot more to work with, basically. So now that we've seen what these materials are made of, let's see what they look like in both Inkscape and Twinmotion. Here we are in Inkscape, and again, we can start to see a big difference in these materials. On the left, you see that 2018 with just the bump map, and then 2019 plus on the right side with the new PBR type material. And we can really see a big difference in the floor. Again, this is the same material on both the floor and the walls. So we can see a big difference in the floor, in that the floor on the left just looks really flat. There's not a lot of detail. And even as I get in here more closely, we can really see more detail coming out of all the bricks in the brick on the right side. Now, as I look at the wall, we're going to start to see a lot more definition. And we see more relief and definition because of where the light's coming from. I've got the sun that's coming from basically just straight up above, and so we've got more shadows that are showing up from all the relief patterns. So as I get in here looking at this, we can see they look pretty similar. There's not a whole lot that's different, but you can start to see a bit of a difference between the left and the right, primarily within the detail and how the light is affecting the material. Looking at the left, we see like a higher contrast, and it just looks, it's almost blown out a bit. And it could be to where the sun is. If I change this, we can see things do change, but it does look a bit blown out compared to the right, whereas this it just carries a lot more of the detail, much smoother. It looks a lot more natural. I'll start to affect the sun here a bit to where we can get some more shadows introduced and start to see more of a difference. And I've got this light post in here so we can just see what these look like in a darker scene as well. So as in shadow, again, they look kind of similar, but we're getting more accurate looking details and bump here as opposed to the left side. It's just because of the increased number of maps that we have to work with and how they're working. So that looks pretty similar, but I want you to see the difference as I get into nighttime and this lamp post comes on. Changing this to night now, we can start to see this light come on. And this, I will say that both look pretty good. And now once this renders out, we can start to see this look better. So I'll get a little closer. And again, most of these they both look pretty good. But honestly, a stark difference between the left and the right is just that blown out look. On the left, we see this more blown out look. And that's just because the material is not built to enhance or deal with the light as well as the material on the right side. So we can see on the right, it looks so much better, and it's not giving us that blown out look. It looks like brick that's lit up by a lamppost whereas this looks like a spotlight is on the brick. Now, something I can't quite explain all that well, and I've got the reflections turned down both pretty well on both of them, but the sheer amount of reflectivity that's showing up here on the left side and on this material on the floor specifically is just ridiculous. Now I can start to see some of it on the right side, and it's just because it's on a flat surface that is, perpendicular to the light as opposed to this more upright wall type. It's just because I have less maps, I don't have much definition, and so I'm getting it's appearing to be more flat, which is why it looks that way. So you can clearly see a big difference in these two materials, and I'd highly recommend using this new PBR material, especially in Inkscape, because it just looks so much more natural. It makes more sense, looks better. So I'd highly recommend using that because, the contrast from the 2018 and older versions of this material in Revit is just lacking a bit compared to the new PBR version. So let's move on to Twin Motion and see what these look like. And here we are in Twin Motion, looking at these same materials. I'm in presenter mode, so we can clearly see these two materials at work. Again, we're seeing some of the same kind of things we were seeing in Inkscape. The distinct difference between a bump map and every other map that we have access to with these PBR materials. Immediately down the middle on the left side, it just looks more flat, a little more boring. Light hits it a little more like contrasty, like it's stark. Whereas the right, I've got more definition, I got a lot more detail. You can see that the roughness and normal maps are really having some impact here. And it looks more natural. And I'm actually going to change the sun. We can start to see some of the differences throughout the day. And as it gets to night, we can get this lamppost to work for us. And as this turns on, we can start to see the impact of these two different types of materials. Again, pretty similar to what we were seeing in Inkscape. We've got more contrast here on the left. It's just kind of blown out more so, and we actually can see all this detail coming out on the right side with this PBR material. The floor looks, again, left, it's kind of flat, right? It's got more detail, and it's reacting to light a little better. So I've actually, let me show you how I've built these different materials within Twin Motion. So if I select these materials, here on the left I can see there's nothing real special here other than in the color I've made sure that I've got my texture, which is just my base color, regular base color there. Now, if I look back and go to settings, I can see that I've got my bump map there, but I want to make sure that that is set to, the same value as both the left and the right. We get the same look. So I've got the bump set to 75%, and now let's look at the right. I've got my same color here, my texture map there. Whereas I've also got the same amount of bump here at 75%, but the difference is that I could even put a metalness map if I wanted to. I went ahead and made sure that I had the roughness map goes into the reflection, so I have that. Because it's a brick, I don't actually have reflections turned on, so it's not really doing all that much, but nonetheless, you can clearly see the stark difference in all of these different types of materials and how they're working within Twin Motion and Inkscape. The distinct difference, and I would highly recommend, and I hope you can clearly see that we should and hopefully all be using these new PBR materials that we have access to in Revit, starting with 2019 and into 2020 and 2021. So that will do it for this video. If you have any more questions about this, how to build these materials, I'm definitely coming out with more videos about that, whether it's Inkscape, Twinmotion, Revit, whatever it is. But if you have any more specific questions, please leave those in the comments. I will be sure to answer them all. If you did last this long, you're awesome. I really appreciate it. And if you wouldn't mind, please change into the phase of that subscribe button to existing. That always helps me out so much. I sure hope you all have a wonderful day. Thanks for watching my video. Hope to see you in the next one.